dive into what's the latest in Wes's world, Wes's mind. It hasn't stopped. I swear. I just like it. Like I just have one obsession after another, and it's just recently keeps on like in this interrelated way, multi-layered, multi-leveled kind of framework of like that I'm looking at things with. I'm like, so far it keeps going deeper, but it's the stuff that I've been talking about. But what's going on with you though?
Oh gosh, where to start? Well, I feel like I've been telling people I've been having kind of a difficult couple of months. And what I mean by that is that I've been learning and growing and changing, which is unpleasant, despite decades of trying to train myself to find it pleasant. And it's like, well, yeah, no, it's always uncomfortable. And it's like, well, and then I try to remind myself, it's like, going to the gym is also not a fun time, no matter how long you've been doing it. And so it's the same thing. So things are good. I just have to keep reminding myself things are good, right? Like learning and growing.
Yeah. I mean, do you want to talk about that at all? Or
Sure, I'm happy to. I think the biggest thing that's been going on is I've been well, I guess there's two things, right? The first thing is that I have a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old, and that's just like, that is its own thing, right? Like there are countless ways in which I am not the father I want to be to them. And if I sit in that space of not being the father that I want to be for them for a 6-week period, then that phase has moved on. And now I have the option to be the father I want to be in the next phase. Like it's so fast, right? And it's all I can do to keep myself in that mindset of like, this is an invitation to improve. It is not a need to be anxious. But you know how it is, like your limbic system is like completely flipping out and like, oh my God, you're doing a terrible job. And it's like, no, everyone just calm the heck down. We'll do better tomorrow. Keep it, it's just, right? So that's one of them.
Well, I think you have what I'm missing on that front, on it, because I don't have kids. and I think on it, well, there's this aspect I think that I'm missing when I talk to parents sometimes, and that there's this like deep understanding of like, it's tough to be a parent, and I'm ruthless sometimes. I'm like, I know it's tough, but blah, 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 blah. And part of it is, I think, just my own experience and like having life kind of like trauma after trauma thrown at me. And I'm like, if I can get through this shit, a lot of people can, and it's okay. But
I don't think there's anything wrong with holding a firm frame around that stuff. I mean, it's not like, it's not like as a parent, I feel bad when someone says, look, it has to be this way. And if you can't do it this way, then you can't reach the goal. It's like, okay, that's a decision point. That's not a threat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think that I think maybe just in the way I'm talking, there's this level of kind of, if you're a parent, so there's this kind of like, even just like the vibe you might be giving off as you talk about people's kids. I think there might be something there. You're ahead of me. That's all I'm saying, Wes. We already.
I'm sure. I think there's something to it, but one of the things that I'm really feeling very strongly is that the biggest piece about being a parent for me is that the humility that gets pushed onto you is just larger than any humility you would be able to push onto yourself. Like it pushes your ego in ways you would never, or I would never have been able to. Like, I cannot express to you how central to the universe I was relative to where I am now. And now it's kind of like, oh, right, I'm going to die someday and no one's going to remember me. Like that was always intellectual. And now it's like, oh, I kind of see the mechanism by which this will come to pass one day. And it's very helpful, but it's like, oh God, you don't want to confront that all the time. That's a lot.
I don't know why, but it's just, when I think about that and I think about my, like the disease I had and like, I just think of like someone taking a baseball bat to your knees and just, you're bowing down to learning in a different way. It really feels like this it's when it's overwhelming beyond the thing that you can kind of condition to, like, oh, okay, I can like take this piece in, and but it's just like, and I think there's this dramatic change that people experience, with those kinds of like things thrown on there when the world throws something your way, not something planned, obviously.
I think that's right. I really feel like we live our lives like we are driving super tankers through the ocean, right? Like change happens at a certain pace and no faster. Like you can't just do a 180. So when life turns you, like it's a big, like something's wrong, right? Super tanker getting suddenly shifted. That's very unsettling. I want to hear more about the thing that you've been grappling with. I want to, like, I've gotten bits and pieces, but we're hoping that some other folks are going to come along for the ride and want to have a frame. And I think it would be nice just to kind of hear it in your own words. And
well, kind of, I think a good segue here is kind of what we're talking about. If you think about plants and plants growing, it's kind of the difference between like sunshine and pruning. Like the pruning, it's like boom, something gets thrown your way. That's very dramatic. I mean, I was literally just plucking. I have this apple orchard on my land in Virginia here, and we just planted it. And you're supposed to, and this was really hard for me, you pluck off the flowers the first year so the apples don't grow and all that. Yeah, the first year, so that the tree is focused on growing. All of its energy goes into that. It's getting bigger. Just the first year, apparently. I also did a very, I did a confirmation bias way of a Google search on this also, just to be clear. So I hope I did the right thing. A neighbor told me I need to do it, who is part of a major apple producing company that creates, applesauce and all kinds of apple products.
Yeah,
and
right.
he says, this is what we're doing. But so anyways, pruning, it's like, okay. And I felt weird about it, but, pruning is seems like what our brains are experiencing when we have these dramatic kind of situations. And then for me, it's it's this disease that I think is omnipresent. It's just this idea that humans, by creating enclosed spaces indoors, have created this microbial environment that we are not, a lot of people, and it seems broader at some level, but it's just that at least a quarter of the population not evolved to really metabolize. And the whole deal is it kind of creates this miscommunication between your innate immune system, which determines allergic response and all that, and your adaptive immune system. And what's interesting is you think about the immune system as the kind of fundamental learning engine, right? That this is the learning engine that counts. Sure. This is me, this is not me, this is me, it's not me. Right. And all these chromosomes all these HLA types, which are chromosomal units on specifically on chromosome 6, all about immune function. All this stuff, people with these genes, these genes are affecting everything from autism to dyslexia, ADHD, all that. And again, I think the brain is more complicated. It's not we really always want to isolate this gene means this gene means that, blah blah blah. But it's probably
but it's not
more. It's because there's multiple adaptive mechanisms in the brain, but that at least there are these interesting patterns that at bottom make people vulnerable, and in my experience smart, kind of, or more able to access an intuitive frameworks that they can use then to rationalize at a different level, as if I don't know. And that part of it is where I'm kind of still working out what's going on with it. But the fundamental idea is that people could just basically really be way more in touch with their brilliance, their own kind of identity as people, when they're not experiencing neuroinflammation from these just kind of subtle sources that get worse and worse over time because of the quarter of people who have these genes that make it hard to metabolize the toxins that get just stuck in their bodies, just kind of causing this it's basically you're activated a lot of the time. So To
Yeah, yeah.
me, this is the basis of just like every smart person I know is either anxious or depressed or distracted. And it's because like
I have a different theory about that, by the way. Semi joking, but
right. Well, and exactly. But I just, what I notice is like my own hubris, prioritizing like what's in my conscious experience as like kind of to blame, scapegoating whatever I think is causing this. And to me,
that
like
makes sense.
you zoom out, like, like what are aliens looking at us saying? They're saying these apes have shit in their brains, can't learn very well, compared, not communicating with each other very well, definitely not thinking from each other's perspectives very well. Like these core issues that I'm like starting to see, literally based on my own experience of getting better, that like as if thinking from another humans or another species perspective is a biological reality, something that we constantly, say personal attack, oh, this is a bad person, good person, but literally as if like just that faculty, which is a complicated faculty, I don't understand it all the way, but the idea that if your brain function is depressed, boom, gone, and then and then that creates idiot savants, because it's like as if you have like your brain hurts or something, and you're just kind of focused on what you know more or what you're good at more, so you continue to do that and that, ignoring obvious details because it just hurts, because I'm like idiot savant here. And then you think about, and then this is the thing that, again, maybe I'm doing too much too fast, but I know you're with me, Wes, but like, it's just the thing I think about is like, oh yeah, this whole idea of missing something, kind of like important data that allows you to like make good decisions in life. The missing something is also the basis of tragic heroism, things that like writers have been like obsessed with, like as if like fiction's a lot about learning, and how the tragic hero is the person who keeps on getting increasingly stressed, focused on what they already know, not able to let new information in. And so I just have this picture of Othello. Iago's kind of like your brain inflammation that's telling you a different story, and you're thinking, my wife is cheating on me, and that story becoming increasingly locked in over the course of your life, and you're kind of like your world becoming increasingly limited. Anyways, I'm just saying that's the story of pretty much all smart people. Like, it's just like, I feel like I'm one of many tragic heroes in this world. And, and that, because we all kind of do that because it's so stressful, like on a physiological level thing, and
I get
yes, all the other things too. And that's where things like people's genes flip, like my own with this disease. It's called chronic inflammatory response syndrome. It's like the unsexiest name ever, but I like to call it Brilliance disease.
Nice.
It's like Brilliance is a disease, because imagine, here's the kicker for me. It's like, if we do inherit kind of knowledge bases that people have mastered, like fully integrated, kind of like waking up to knowing the right song to sing like a bird, then imagine this like impact, which is it's like pruning that creates specialists at some level, because like you have a subset of genes, you get focused on one thing that you're good at, and you get really good at it, like just because fuck, I can't, everything else can't, I can't even pay attention. Like, I'm good at math. I can't do English, kind of, I can't do literature, kind of that kind of framework. And imagine that person like kind of sacrificing themselves at some level, but their progeny down the line gets that specialized knowledge without it really trying that hard, like as if like proving what they already know, putting conscious frameworks that like bring that subconscious inheritance to light and quickly learn that stuff. And the idea kind of being that like there's this like, I guess that's what I'm kind of talking about, this idea of transmutation, that this pain, honestly, because there's like this social isolation that comes with the obsession of that Brilliance kind of confers, because it's like almost like you got to like, and I kind of did it with tutoring at some level. I was so sick that all I would do is tutor to just like make myself forget about how bad I felt, you know, and because there's a joy to like connecting with people, especially kids. And I have this rare profession where I'm just like laughing all the time and having a good time and being able to distract myself from the pain.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, wow,
and,
like I'm just, yeah, please interrupt me. Yeah.
And while you're doing that stuff, you can rest easy knowing that no matter what's happening for you, you're improving someone else's life in a way that is clear and present for them. And as wonderful as that is, that makes it an extremely powerful distractor if you need to be distracted. And God knows, distracting yourself with helping another human is better than a lot of other distractions you could have picked, for sure.
And I would even go negative on myself on this. I would say that like parasitism, you know, like my brain is so fucked up. Like I'm so sick. So the sickness starts with psychological things. Then your hormones start to change when things get really bad. And then but you don't, you know, as a person, you don't really experience those lights dimming psychologically as much. You're just kind of, you gradually
frog in the water where it's heating up slowly. Yeah.
Exactly. So you're like, you've been kind of navigating this slow change in personhood, kind of becoming a worse person and being okay, I'm not, and thinking of yourself as the better person, getting stressed by the shift in that reality, that's kind of like it hits you in the face sometimes where you're not the person you thought you were, even just on basic cognitive tasks, because your memory starts to get, you lose memories, your processing starts to go, and you think you're like, oh, I'll remember that kind of thing, and you don't, and you get your ass kicked by it. But oh shit, where was I going with that? Help me out, Wes.
See, there you go, the memory.
Yeah, I'm not all the way back yet. I'm telling you, I'm not. I'm still that. I still have a lot of that idiot left in that, around that savant. Still there a little bit. And it's crazy, but it's yeah. Go ahead.
Well, here's what I'm thinking. I wanted I have
break this down, yeah, or whatever you.
Well, I'll try. So the first thing I want to just acknowledge is I do not have the world's largest working memory by a long shot, and so and because of my own psychological makeup, it's really it's fascinating, but it's uncomfortable for me to let you stack up all these ideas without addressing because I can't hold them all in my head. No, it's okay, because here's the thing. If I jump in too early, then I wind up controlling the narrative. And I really wanted to see kind of what was the shape of the narrative. And now that I've, kind of let it lay out, a couple things come through to me. I'm getting the sense that, okay, you've got an internal narrative of what's going on here. I'm thinking that my role in this conversation might be like I don't want to say a translator, but an interpreter. I want to come in as an outside voice and say, okay, here's some of the things that I see there, right? And that
there's
way,
a lot of things
maybe
you kind of have to contextualize, with this. I think there's a lot of room for contextualization, at least, and also beat it up if you don't believe, if you think there's ideas you don't like kind of.
Well, maybe I want to build it out a little bit before I get critical. I mean, you got to brainstorm first before you can start carving anything away. So there are two frameworks that are familiar to me that seem to bear on what you're talking about. Okay, you've said a lot of different things where I'm like, ooh, this framework could help. Ooh, this framework could help. But there are two main ones that keep coming back. So I'm going to just mention those two frameworks now, and maybe those are going to come up in the future in the conversation. So the first one. And these are both in service of trying to make this idea that you're grappling with and this path you're moving through of value, not just to people on the path, but to people who are adjacent to the path, to people who are watching people on the path. Because if you're right and 25% of the people are grappling with it, then only 1/4 of the people are going to be able to relate directly. But the other 3/4 of the people are living with the one, you know what I mean? Like it relates to everyone, right? So thinking of the 1/4, 3/4 thing reminds me of the, and I don't know the degree to which this has, I don't know what the scientific literature would say about this, but in popular culture, there's this common idea of introversion versus extroversion, the notion that people have a different degree to which they get energy from being with people versus get energy from solitude. right? And so the introverts are in a party, they may enjoy it. It doesn't mean they're shy. It just means they're drained at the end and they got to go read a book or whatever. Whereas the introverts, I'm sorry, I got it backwards. Whereas the extroverts, if they're home alone with the cats for a day, they go crazy. They got to go out and see their friends at the beer garden or whatever it is. Okay. Yeah. Historically, I was kind of on the line, but I've drifted towards introvert over the course of my life. And that makes me roughly a quarter of the people are considered to be introverts is my, again, pop psychology understanding. 3/4 are extroverts by and large. And as you well know, our current culture really biases everyone in the direction of extroversion. Now, what makes this interesting to me is I identify as an introvert who used to be on the line, but I went to college at a place where as a person on the line, I qualified as an extrovert. Okay. So in that culture, I was an extrovert, right? Like I catch up with college buddy of mine who I haven't talked to a while. And they're like, what do you mean you're an introvert? You're no introvert. I'm like, well, in the broader world.
Yeah. Wow. Lots coming up for me on this. Yeah.
I kind of thought maybe it would because the thing, so I'm married to an extrovert, right? And it's like, we've been married over 10 years and like, there's an intellectual level on which we each get it, but there is a lived experience level on which I have come to realize like it's never going to be natural to either of us. I gotta just trust that she's not lying when she says going to those 3 parties in a row is going to be delightful, because to me it sounds like the 7th circle of hell. Not that I dislike anyone at the parties. Like I would love to be able to go to the 3 parties in the row, but that's not ever gonna happen, because by party number 3, I'm gonna be a raging asshole. Not because I want to be, but just because I'm drained. And the raging asshole comment brings me to the other framework that I'm bringing here, which is that starting, in my 20s, I had chronic lower back pain. I had it for like 20 years. And it was absolutely of the life-changing variety. It was the kind of thing where you'd talk to me for 20 minutes on a bad day and you'd be like, I don't know what the fuck is wrong with that guy, but something the fuck is wrong with that guy. You know what I mean? Like it was really like, and I was just like the frog and
that's inflammation driven? Is that what that is? Or is that just because you hurt your back somehow?
No, it's information driven. Like it was
inflammation driven. Sorry.
Oh, inflammation driven. Well, so it's funny. It's actually more information than inflammation driven. So here's what I know. Here's what I know. There was no injury and there was no obvious reason why there should be a physical problem. Okay. And I routinely experienced muscular tension that was like, what I want you to imagine is holding up a 10-pound weight in this position until you can't feel your arm anymore. Okay. You can imagine that like that would be just like, it's not like it's excruciatingly painful. It's just like, okay, my arm is no longer an arm in a meaningful sense, right? That's what my back muscles would do. They would clench so hard that like I couldn't bend over, like, and I couldn't walk. I couldn't do all this other stuff. And in fact, the way I discovered it had really come to a head was when I was touring 6 weeks a year with a band. And so we'd perform for, 90, 120 minutes a night on stage, standing up. And finally they staged an intervention. They were like, you have become such an asshole to us that we know, like we've known you for a long time. We know you're not an asshole. We know something's wrong and we want to help you, but you can't keep touring with us and being this guy. And it was just like, it was a really, powerful moment. Now skip forward and now I'm going to lose 3/4 of the audience here, but my back pain was cured by reading a book. Because at the end of the day, there was a psychosomatic cycle that was happening for me that was reinforcing certain physical behavior. And it's not an illusion of pain. I don't want anyone to get the idea that it was in my head. In that sense, it was like the pain was absolutely pain. But it turns out that the solution for it was in changing my behaviors, both with respect to how I held my body and how I processed certain emotions. Okay. And believe me, if there is a guy on the planet who would listen to that story and call bullshit, I am that guy. That sounds nuts, even coming out of my own mouth. All I can say is all I can say is
No.
I did all the things and that was my experience and that's what I got. Right. So, so I'm hearing you tell this stuff. Right. And like part of my brain is like, God, what is Ian smoking? But the other part of my brain is like, you know, you've got some parts of your experience that rhyme an awful lot with what Ian is saying here.
Yeah.
And for me, that makes it very, very real, even if I don't experience it directly.
And so much to say about all that. Wow.
You have the problem I had a couple minutes ago. Jump in wherever you want.
Yeah, good. Well, you still were shorter than me, so that helps me a little bit. You know,
so
my working memory is probably within Wes Carroll's right there. This is you. But yeah, no, let's see. First of all, I think rhyming is really a key word when it comes to neurological symptoms because it kind of splays out in different directions based on kind of genes. And so like even with this disease, there's like 6 major symptom clusters, and they're like, yeah, do you have like a bunch, enough of these symptom clusters to the extent that like any traditional doctor looking at this is going to see like this huge, one tiny part of this huge elephant, because the brain affects everything. And so like there's that. The other things that came up for me is just definitely my awareness of the societal value on extroversion versus introversion. That, just that, I mean, you think about the clumsy kid who like is ambidextrous. They're usually so perceptive, insanely perceptive. Like and I know there's a lot of MIT grads that are like this, and they have this ambidexterity and their intuition, whatever shape, form, like crazy, like, something different about people who are like that, but we are so focused on neurological energy being converted to motor functions, as opposed to the perceptual kind of like more complicated functions that like, perceiving.
We have professional sports players, but they are at a different prestige level from talented professional therapists. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So I think that's a shame. And then this is the thing that this is the framework that I think is just so different, because we're always trying to kind of capture the human condition at some level. But like my new framework is that like this shit is dynamic. Like who we potentially can be is so dictated by our literal environments at a level that for me is blowing my mind just based on my personal experience. To the point that I'd say, I don't know if you've ever we're always coming at truth from different angles, and it's always literature for me, and to the point where I'm like, I'm sure you're there, but like, it's so interesting. Me starting to get better. Also, like, I started with a book. So I was right at the beginning of COVID. I did this. So I did this 20-day water fast. I just said that. I think I mentioned
you told me about that. Right. Which sounds oh my God.
Yeah. Oh God, it was so water fast can be good because humans and all mammals have this kind of like trick in their genetics where your system just shuts down and it does this, like starts focusing on cleansing and all of this. Like for a lot of people who are sick in the right way, and the Soviet Union has so much data on this stuff. It's interesting. I don't want to promote it for anyone. Like you would need to go to a fasting clinic, and doctors will take you out of that situation as soon as something goes wrong. I'm also, of course, like the canary in the coal mine type who doesn't listen very well and is insanely stubborn. Honestly, I think because of my sickness. So I'm at that moment convinced I have Lyme's disease. I meet this woman who does this fast in the clinic. She's literally like 110 pounds. And she goes down to 80 pounds during this thing, and everything was okay. Her vitals are fine. Everything's fine. She pops back up. She gets rid of Lyme's disease. So I'm like, in the most desperate straits, not knowing that I was living in a house that had insane levels of black mold. In fact, like a guy who is a technician 30 years, worst he's ever seen. So I'm like, tragic hero. And doing the water fast and all that stuff, and almost died because my hormones were messed up in a way that my anti-diuretic hormone, stops being produced. Meaning I drink water.
You're holding water.
Oh yeah, no. And so anti-diuretic,
the other way around.
Way around, yeah. So I drink water. I don't hold on to it at all. It's gone. I'm like drinking bottles of water over the toilet. Again, ignoring obvious realities about how I'm feeling because I'm so desperate to get better. So like all of this experience kind of helped me realize, let's just say that I was a tragic hero and I was wrong about what I thought it was, and that's eventually helped me learn that what it actually was. But as I started to get better, I started to read.
I've never read it. Gabriel
Garcia Marquez. Yeah. So the whole idea, 100 Years of Solitude, is basically about this family. Reminds me of my family. It's like the Colombian version. I have a lot of family in the South, where it's like generation after generation, you're using the same names, calling people the same things, the same exact patterns take place, where you get some people who are super extroverted and some who are super introverted, and they keep falling into the same patterns. And no one's actually kind of like learning beyond who they think their identity, is. It's confined to that kind of scope almost automatically. And the crazy thing about this book is like, there's just like the role of floods, plays like it's a huge character where like kind of it washes out what we thought before. Floods. And he talks about mold across all these, like mold is a big thing. And so like I'm reading this, not really like, realizing the connection at the time. But I mean, I'm talking about stopping an intergenerational trauma that is affecting people, all the time. So I think like I started to realize like that this is what's happening, is that I just think the introvert extrovert thing has to do with, I've either am letting more information in, and that's been a lot for me. And maybe that has to do with a genetic predisposition and, some experiences early on in life. And therefore I'm going to keep my world a little smaller because, that's a lot, meanwhile, the extrovert is either by choice or by brain damage or by, like just capacity, not getting as much in, and therefore like seems
sorry,
like that.
I didn't want to cut you off at therefore,
but that and that therefore like there's and that can change the point where I feel like I'm choosing all the time now. And I used to be definitely an introvert before, and then I became definitely an extrovert when I was in the house, and I was like hypomanic half the time, just like possessed, haunted house, crazy Ian. It was fun for my students to watch. They thought this was the greatest show on earth. I swear to God.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. But it was sad, honestly. I kind of like tragic in a lot of ways. But anyways, there's another long one. But that's what comes up for me, is just like how there's this dynamism to who we are, and there's a tendency to kind of define ourselves. I'm this, I'm that, and
that's right.
Right. And definition is where growing stops, right? It's like the contours of who we are. It's boom, right there. We've decided.
Well, so definition is
important,
rigid.
though. I'm not saying it's bad. It's not bad. Yeah.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, right? It can be a limiting factor, and it can be a structure on which things grow. And obviously it's both, right?
Yeah.
But the place I wanted to take this, at least for a moment, see if it has legs, is the discussion that we've all been having with ourselves and with our close friends over the last couple of years, maybe the last more than a couple of years, which is about having our attention hijacked. Because the thing that I keep hearing in what you're saying that resonates so strongly with me, let me put a little context on this. I'll just inhabit the persona of MIT guy here for a minute. Okay. Engineer.
Oh, yes. Sure.
So we're all about changing the world. And I don't mean in a grandiose way. I just mean like, building the thing and now there's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Designing the thing and now there's the thing, discovering the thing and now there's the thing, right? There's a problem here. We're going to solve it. That's the core story behind engineering. There's a problem and I'll solve it. I will change a thing and then the problem will be lessened somehow. Okay. Mm-hmm. And when you're deep in the mindset of, okay, I'm going to go fix a problem, right? You're completely externalizing your experience and your relationship with the world, right? What am I trying to do? I'm trying to solve a problem. When, as an engineer, you go to therapy, you are looking inside your head for a problem to solve. It's not unreasonable, but like, it's a very deeply held sort of worldview of like, okay, my job on this planet is to seek out problems and to solve them. Okay. And the problems that we most try to solve are the problems that are outside ourselves. The thing that we most value is being extroverted, dealing with other folks. And like, human connection is priceless beyond measure. I'm not denigrating extroversion in any way. I'm just saying that we're so inclined to do that. I'm hearing you tell a story of kind of bucking the trend, looking inward, noticing something is, I don't want to say wrong, but that something has changed, that something could be addressed, and getting a lot out of that. And I can't help notice how much positive change I've experienced in myself, in my students, in my friendships, right? From just either guiding myself to look inward, guiding someone else to look inward, or in the case of coaches and stuff, having someone else gently but firmly turn my gaze back at my own self so I can see, it's like, yeah, no, that's not what I want to see there. It's not, we aren't a society of promoting that kind of self-awareness, or even sometimes it feels like self-acknowledgement. And I don't know, that feels like an important thread to the story to me.
It's so important. It's so important. And I think part of it is our own physiology, that so according to polyvagal theory and the latest in neuroscience that I understand, we are the primary influencers of our conscious reality, our memories of the past and our emotional state, more than anything we're actually perceiving, and then granted we're using the millisecond ago past as informing our current conscious reality.
But if I can just interpret that to make sure I'm tracking with you, what you're saying is that my environment isn't my environment. My environment is my interpretation of my environment as filtered through my own experiences and my own emotional state.
Absolutely that. And literally, like when you open your eyes and see things, it's a guess that your perceptions are confirming or denying like milliseconds later. Like that's what they're saying, is that like the conscious reality is a guess. It's not like
I'm willing to accept that as an axiom. That seems very I'm good with that.
Which is like am I seeing that right? Like kind of starts to make sense when you see, those kinds of frameworks and all that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So the inward looking stuff is so important because on a physiological basis, our bodies are programmed to not pay attention to the interior unless it hits a certain threshold of alarm state. But below that threshold, where chronic neuroinflammation kind of lives, our conscious reality is being impacted. And let's just put away like environmental toxins, and let's just assume, like let's do the more traditional conventional idea of like, hey, you're holding on to stuff in your body, kind of that, like, people, and you're like, how people hold on to stress in their shoulders or their hips, that kind of like,
my whole story of back pain, like that's for sure. Right. So that's what we're talking about for sure.
And so then boom, the assholery comes out, because it's the that and you were very aware of that pain. So you're like, okay, that makes sense. But like, I think it's a sub threshold kind of agitation that is influencing people's conscious realities at an extraordinary level. And
right.
What I'm saying is that there are many culprits, but the hubris about living indoors, especially when you're in like the South or in humid places where just mold is growing like crazy. I mean, is the most overlooked and yet probably most important factor that's causing that base level of inflammation to be there for a lot of people, making it hard to just have learning experiences and have because I'm just thinking a learning experience, you can't have too many stressors at once, because then you're just like it's that pruning thing. You can only deal with that once in a while, let's say. Like otherwise it's just overwhelming. People shut down, if they're vulnerable especially. So
let's lean into our actual expertise on this one, and talk about it from that perspective, because that's so real from our perspective as tutors. Because what we've seen any number of times, I'll tell you a story, and you're going to be like, yeah, I've seen that 1,000 times, right? Here's the story. Kid is preparing to take some high stakes test that will have some into the foreseeable future and beyond, recognizes the importance of it, okay? And therefore, whenever confronting the test, moves at a pace that is far too quick to do well because of the anxiety of not being able to finish. And when confronted with this reality, responds with, but if I don't go this fast, I might not finish, as though a lion is chasing the kid across the savannah. The limbic system is 100% in charge of the entire thing, even when the kid hears his own words and recognizes how ridiculous it sounds. I mean, is this a true story or what?
Oh my God. I mean, I can take it so much, like I can put that and put steroids on that story. I mean, imagine the kid and the parents, they're paying you hundreds of dollars an hour often, for really surgical like advice, and not just advice, but help, starting with the kids' reality, asking the right questions to help them come to new consciousness, all that kind of but comes as a surprise while doing practice tests, while doing the real thing, for this high stakes test, that the most important thing is to change behaviors based on what we talk about. I mean, because they're so stressed, go to what that was already in their consciousness before tutoring, because it was there longer. I can't tell you the number of times, even just for the writing and language section of the SAT, it's I'm you got to be a grammar doctor, diagnose, kind of put it in a category, understand, and then then you operate, then you cure, right? You are acting like a drug dealer, just it sounds great. This drug sounds good. This drug sounds good too. And I'm what have we been talking about this whole time? But I'm just, it's interesting.
It's reversion to what's comfortable. Right?
Well, yeah, because the brain power, it takes more effort to be that conscious reality if you're in a stress state. And it's also a matter of taking on my perspective. And you cannot entertain other perspectives if you're up here. And that's the basis of polyvagal theories. Come back down here, come back down to a calm state, and we can talk, we can have dinner, we can have things that kind of, and that we entertain that we never thought before. And that's why I'm so in that situation, let's say I'm stop speeding up. What you should do is you should look at something this is what I'm telling everybody that is relatively smart. Think of yourself as a genius, right? And then start doing problems with the idea that things should come easy for you. Skip as soon as it doesn't come easy to you, and trust your subconscious to do work while you're doing other stuff. come back around
Sure.
and see if it comes to you. I mean, it's probably a very common, obvious strategy but it takes into this idea that your brain's like, just give it some time to see things a couple of times. You give your subconscious a chance to kind of like work things out. Like, you'd be surprised. You don't even have to think about this stuff. But instead, you know, like that ends up, that itself, even though I like explain why it makes so much sense, explain how like if you're dyslexic, you kind of, or have ADHD, how like, you know, creating an agreement between your past and future self about a problem can overcome a lot of processing issues that result from I can slow down on that one. Creating an agreement between your current and future self, as in two perspectives looking at the same thing and reconciling. And the idea that if you're dyslexic, there's this kind of right hemisphere recruitment where you're really thinking from other perspectives. And if it's you, I mean, that strategy kicks ass for those kids. But I'm telling you, everybody is just in this state of self-judgment, kind of, you know, like focused on, I need to speed up because it's the thing I know that I should be doing more of. And that's the tragic hero story.
No, it's totally true. I can't tell you how much value I and some of my kids have gotten out of the jujitsu move of the following thing happening in a split second inside your own head. Okay. I'm in the middle of this thing. It really matters to me. I feel myself tensing up and speeding up. And I take a moment to say, hey, voice in the back of my head, I know you're triggering my adrenal glands because you want the best for us. You want me to do well and you want me to move fast. And you know what? I appreciate where you're coming from on that. But I'm in the driver's seat at this time. So while I appreciate your enthusiasm, I'm going to take a somewhat different turn, dial it back, and do better. Because when I'm moving more slowly, I see more shortcuts. But still, thanks for being the cheering section. I know when I need to hit the gas. I know you're there for me. Thanks. You know, it's such a ridiculous thing, but like anything, when you talk about current and future selves and having that agreement, like I think that kind of recognition that like all kinds of crazy voices are happening in your head, they're all there for reasons that they believe are good reasons. It doesn't mean that they're all right all the time. You know, it's just like, thanks for trying, and we're going to do it this other way.
Yeah. And you know, I think what you're also talking about is, so I'm talking about agreements and intersection of perspectives of, you know, future and present self and past self. Okay. But you seem to be saying higher self and lower self, like having a better kind of relationship. Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe those
no, I mean, I think that
exactly
makes sense. I frame the crazy voice as sort of like past/present self, the voice of habit, and the other voice is the voice of like, this is the person I'm becoming, and I'm going to choose to lean into it instead of falling back into what's always worked. Because here's the thing. I've tried that before lots of times. It's gotten me as far as it's going to get me. There's no guarantee that this new thing is going to be any better, but there is absolutely a guarantee that if I don't try something new, nothing's ever going to change. So here we are.
You know, and I deeply relate in such a paradoxical way, because it's like, you know, students feel lost on the test. I have a problem with losing things. And the same exact thing happens where I'll just misplace my keys and put them over here. And I just don't, and like, for some reason, and I think it has to do with my mom growing up being incredible at that. Hey, Mom, where's this? There. And then having a girlfriend recently, there, you know, it's there. Like having this insane visual spatial memory, you know, that
it's like how I can't find my way around my own neighborhood because Google Maps exists.
Exactly. I'm like, this is my like visual spatial Google, like, you know, mom, the girlfriend. I'm like, God, I have a disability that I'm trying to solve here, and or at least make up for. And so like, imagine that, like, I keep doing this because, again, my brain is not all the way healed yet. Like, I can do a neuroquant and I probably have some holes in my brain, basically, because of the dramatic level of how bad shit has gotten. And the reality is that there's a way to get it back. That's the crazy thing. This VIP, vasointestinal polypeptide, something that controls basically, along with MSH, which I'm not going to be able to break down, melon site, blah, blah, blah. But the point is these two hormones, testosterone, estrogen, there are other ones. These ones basically bring you down from your kind of activated state. Those are what so a lot of people, especially people with gut problems, or they have skin problems, or they have sinus problems, these things control the, like all of that. So if you have those problems, those are low, guaranteed. So I'm taking that, bringing my brain back, Got it. But anyways, long story short is that idiot part of my idiot savant is my own kind of SAT, my own kind of high stakes test, because I start getting all like, what is wrong with you, to myself, like, what, how can you pop, I'm like, and every single time I'm just like, okay, that problem, don't try to solve that problem now. Skip, come back. And most of the time when I calm down, I start to tell the story in my head that got me to putting my phone in the dumbest place that I'm, and I realize why I did it. And I get back there, thinking from the perspective of Ian from the past. Not able to do that in the present if I'm all jacked up about it and judging myself about it. Right. But I know it's just like a really dumb, simple example that I think is important to kind of think of, just losing things and not getting. But now I swear it's like I say this jacket that I keep leaving at places, it's chasing me down. I don't even worry about it anymore. I know it's always going to find me. And I think that mindset is more helpful than just kind of, being, I guess, like self-denigrating about it or something. Because my girlfriend would handle that, before she like helped me understand how much of an idiot I was. But yeah.
To me, you're talking, or the framework that I usually place that stuff in is react versus respond. I'm very quick to react to things, and reaction is not the good one. Responding is the good one, right? I'm just acknowledging that it's very easy for me to get an input and for me to just react very quickly, right? Someone does something I don't like and I snap at them instead of like taking it in for a second. And I think that's like a lot of my life has been lived in environments where quick reaction is praised, or where quick response is praised, right? Whatever. But my quickest response is a reaction. Well, right. But what that means is that I'm grooved to react. Now, I'm sure that there are other reasons for that as well. Like, I don't mean to blame whatever, it doesn't matter. But the point is that I get so much mileage in my day-to-day life on those days when I lean just a little bit harder into a half-second pause before I let myself do anything, which sounds so easy. But, it's not. In the same way that, like, meditating, you're sitting there doing nothing. How hard can it be? Well, I got news for you, Jack. It's not so easy.
Yeah. Well, and I think what you're talking about is part of the neurological realities. Like, you're literally providing those milliseconds extra for your brain to like go beyond the automaticity that is there. And it's like also older sibling syndrome at some level too. Mm-hmm. Like it's older sibling syndrome. It's colonist language syndrome. Like you understand, like kind of like, because it's not built in with this idea that it's someone else's world. It's white man's world, kind of, and English, right, is a language that is so like fuck you to everybody else because there's no inner logic to it. And it's like it's kind of the idea is like you should just understand me, okay? It's not a listener focused kind of like language. So I think it just creates this kind of situation where we can react. There's no like hey, I better think first because I'm a woman, and if I do the wrong thing, I'm, maybe there's a violence I could experience that. And again, not even if it's not today, epigenetically that stuff is there, you know, like I have to take care of my kids, make sure that they survive, or else my husband will beat me or something like that.
Mhm.
Violence, something bad, and minorities and all of that. But it eliminates the ability for so many people who find themselves in positions of power and who decide that they deserve it, to think from other people's perspective and completely debilitating that power, I think, because I think the real power is making decisions that are more collectively based and thinking about the forces that are like playing into them, which big force in nature is people right now on Earth. So yeah, I think it's the biggest issue. And then, like Tom, right, there's a disease that's causing this also, like not just, it's kind of the idea, it's what you started with, psychosomatic or somatic psycho. Is this disease kind of bringing this down, and then we create these entire worlds that have self-reinforcing mechanisms around them. Hard to tell where it's, you know, where it begins and where it ends. I'm just hypothesizing that it begins with somatic, you know, because I think just at some level, it always starts there, and then we fictionalize from there. You know, and then the fiction creates the experience, and creates the fiction, and creates the experience. But at the beginning, it's somatic.
Well, the beautiful part is where it begins does not need to be related to where the solution begins. Okay. So while, you know, whether it starts with no matter which habit it starts with, what I've observed again and again, this is my back pain. This is my, you know, experience of being a beginning meditator. This is my experience of your experience as you've communicated it to me over multiple conversations, as well as this one, is there's this cycle that's reinforcing itself. Okay. But the fix can start with either I had this idea that maybe something was wrong, or the fix can start with I went for a walk in the forest and I was struck by what a different experience it was than what I was expecting, because I was outdoors all day. Like it almost doesn't matter if one half of it kind of has a little bit of a trigger enough that the other half can kind of get on board. It's like when I was talking about the back pain, right? It's not like I read a book and I was cured. It's I read a book and it shifted some things in the way that I carry myself. And guess what, right? So the psychology affects the somatic, which creates some relief, which makes a little mental space for trying to make some different shifts. Like, you know, there was a point in that whole process where I went for a walk around the block. It wasn't that long ago that a walk around the block was like a big scary thing for me.
Wow, Wes, damn.
You know what I mean? But like, it's gotten to the point where a walk around the block is now pleasant, and it's doubly pleasant for me when I remember how much it used to be horrible for me to do that. Although I can't dwell on it too much, because if I put my mind too much in that space, some of those, you know, circuits or whatever will get reactivated. I can feel my back muscles tense as I'm talking about it, because it's ready. You know, it's ready to kind of snap me back into it. But it's like, nope, I'm not being chased in the savannah by a lion. Everybody calm the hell down. We're okay. You know what I mean? Like, it's this really metastable situation. I'm sorry, I'm going off on a bit of a tangent, but it's just because like everything you're talking about is like, it's so central to experiences that make a big difference for our lives as people, but they're not like, when was the last time I talked with someone about this? It doesn't come up very often because we don't pay attention to cycles like these as a matter of routine. We're much more interested in becoming an influencer and getting into the right college and making sure we're going to make enough money next year. And it's like, okay, real concerns, but like, guess what? I'm here to tell you, if you have chronic pain all the time, it's going to get in the way of all those other goals. If you have an environmental stressor that's degrading your brain function on any level, I'm here to tell you it's going to get in the way of your other goals, right? Yeah, if you're reacting when you could be responding. Anyway.
No, I'm totally there. Have you seen Westworld on HBO?
Oh, I watched the first season and loved it. And I didn't, I think I dropped off in the beginning of the second season, partly because it was just like, this is going to sound ridiculous, but it was almost like, this is too good, I don't want to watch this, because it was very good. And it was also like, this is scary in a way that I find deeply personal. I mean, really enjoyed it, but it was just like, oh, that's really hardcore.
There's something in there for everybody in terms of like, oh, this could be the future. This is scary. To me, I like the thing that I couldn't stop thinking about is the Shakespearean element of it, which is like gaining consciousness. Like, first of all, like I think they're clearly saying, hey, viewers, you guys are the robots, just so we're clear here. Like we're the robots, right? Like, right. I mean, like they didn't even bother making the robots look they made them look like us. We're, completely human looking. The most genius trick, right? So there was no separation there. And they're like, and I think they're saying this is you. And it's because it's like, it's so clear that it's like trying to develop self-awareness and higher consciousness. And this goes back to that, my introvert and extrovert point, which is, you notice how like the robots all have this like origin story. Often it has to do with pain, but it's just this limiting way of seeing themselves that then becomes their algorithm through which they like engage with the outside world. They understand it through their painful origin story because their identity is lock and key. And you notice as they break out of it, they're like, fuck the origin story. I'm like whoever I want to be. And I feel like that's like kind of part of my own evolution that's happened recently, this kind of waking up where it's like all the things I thought were me, a lot of them had to do with my brain being under fire, first of all. So that wasn't even my personality. And then second of all, everything else too. It's like this is maybe way more of a choice in terms of self-identity than I realized. So anyways, I thought that the first season's killer. It loses its kind of philosophical undertone and becomes that futuristic, nightmarish kind of thing a little bit. I mean, but actually it goes deeper in terms of like understanding consciousness for sure. It's very playing with that in very scary ways by the second season for sure. And
and not to be super spoilery, right? But there's like, I totally agree. Like you're watching these robots and they seem like humans and they have real feelings and all this kind of stuff. And I kind of thought I knew where it was going. And then it turns out that there is a human character who is revealed later to not be human at all. And he himself does not realize he is not a human, right? And that's the moment at which it was like, oh, these people thought this through. I like what they're doing here. And I'm going to put this down for a week before I look at this again.
I just love these, like, totally these stories about waking up, I think they're these interesting. First of all, the Shakespeare stuff about like, that's the difference between a tragedy and a comedy. And then there's the Matrix, because I'm like, this is the subtle thing that I'm trying to do with Wes here. I'm like, hey, Wes is clearly Neo. I'm looking more increasingly like Morpheus here. And I might have the red pill that Wes could be taking and saying like, what the heck is this biological thing, But I'm like, right, whether it's psychological, biological, it's all these reinforcing mechanisms in the wrong direction, to the point where I was thinking about just common phrases like, like it's hard. The right thing is hard to do. It's always easier to do the wrong thing. And I was like, I really agreed with that when my brain was fucked up. But now, as my brain health gets better, I'm like, no, it's kind of easier to do the right thing. Because I'm like naturally thinking from different people's perspectives better. And I'm like, oh, I would love to like do nice things. It makes me feel good. I'm not like in pain so much that I have to focus all of my like energy on self-care and or just dealing with the agitation in my brain. And now I'm free to do that shit, and I'm just like more creative on that level, because I'm like basically treating other people's conscious experience as kind of more, as weighting it kind of more equally, not totally, but like than before. And I think that there's a lot of unequal weighting one way or another. Either people ignoring their own perspective completely and exclusively looking at others, or the opposite, like would be me, tragic hero stuff. But either way, it's kind of like brain's not working all the way, because they should be reconciling yours and another, finding that intersection, getting deeper, broader, all that good stuff. But people really struggle with that, one or the other, right? And I think, again, it goes back, tying it back to the introversion and extroversion. at least in my family, like my mother and brother are going to, like, social situations will tend to be the ones who are just completely focused on anything but themselves. They're what they think, exclusively, very emotionally intelligent, completely there. And then me, I talk too much sometimes, you know, as we know. So it's just, you know, kind of like that changing as my brain gets better, as in I have a choice. I don't have to be that. Creating new habits much faster. I think, oh, that's it. And this is what I noticed in tutoring the most. Smart people immediately understand things. They understand it.
Yeah. Integrating
behavior change. That's the problem. Integrating changes. But
okay, I'm with you. So to me, so I'm originally trained as a computer scientist, right? So that's my framing, is software and hardware. Now I know that this doesn't map onto brains very well, but I'm going to use that analogy because it's comfortable for me and it's got some value. For me, right, you've got this wetware in your head, your neurons are doing what they're doing, you've got your emotions, you've got all this kind of good stuff. There's a physical substrate there, but there's also software in the sense of like my beliefs, my thoughts, my whatever. I don't mean to take this analogy too far, but one of the things that you're really Carol Dweck mindset, right? Took the educational world by storm a decade ago. It's still echoing through, right? Her big insight was that over time, you can change who you are. And if you recognize that in the moment, you are more capable of learning, which is fundamentally change, right? Learning is mental change on some level, right? So if you recognize, right, if you believe, oh, I am X amount smart, you will always behave as though you're X amount smart, and you will protect yourself from experiences that prevent you from being X amount smart, right? Whereas if it's like, look, I'm willing to take on this risk and take on this new framework, this new mindset, you're running different software. Well, guess what your brain is really good at? It's good at conserving energy, which means it's going to get better and better at natively running whatever software you run on it. Okay.
That makes it super clear. I think that's it right there. That's it. Can't bring in new software. Yeah, exactly. And that's the challenge, I think. And I think there's a bug in the system. That's what's going on for a lot of us. And that because I'm telling you, didn't, you know, and we should probably wrap up because it's a long conversation, but I mean, just like Spanish, for example, last 2 years, get to fluency, no problem. You know, just slow to learn, slow, like sure, writing and reading, fine. But the act of speaking, always for me, cognitive weakness. I mumbled a lot as a kid, part of that shy stuff. And now it's like, no problem. You know, just crazy. I don't know. Like, again, I don't know what to make of it. I'm just, and the other piece, more connected. You know, I think a lot of smart people disconnected. And again, I live on an RV trailer on my land now, like with not many people around, but I'm feeling more connected. I can't explain it. And I think it has to do with like, so that I did this presentation with a doc, and he's like, yeah, with VIP, dendrites are reconnecting. And I'm like, yeah, well, I'm experiencing that, like kind of like my connection, like in the world, you know, that's my projection of like what the mind-based version of it. It's been very like, I'm like, wow, I've been missing a lot.
Yeah. I mean, what I hear you saying is you've been experiencing the outside world through your own perceptions more. And now you're actually letting in more of the data and allowing it to be what it is instead of half ignoring it because you think you already know what it is. I mean, maybe I'm reading too far into it. But
no, absolutely. And there's the blasé attitude is part of it, which we all adopt just to survive. You know, people who are very smart and vulnerable to the outside world.
Oh God.
It's even playing into it. It's like, it's cool to be that way, you know? Yeah. No big deal. I mean, I started like, after all this, I was just running around Washington, D.C. and I'm like, you know, these monuments are fucking insane. You know, like I used to always be like, you know, like no big deal. You know, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I really checked them out for the first time. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, probably took us a while. we can hardly build shit these days, given all the, like the way things go with, everything, no one's getting anything done in America or something, and maybe it's good, but I was impressed. And I was like seeing the world with new eyes kind of thing. And I think it's like, it's that idea of being open into change as part of the learning process, like knowing that knowing nothing to lose is also meaning that I'm not in a static identity, just period. Baby level.
I think I'm going to set the intention for this conversation going forward that this for me is going to be an opportunity to sit with you as you're in the middle of this change and to think about my own changes, right? And what we can each do to catalyze positive change, right? To avoid having it bleed over into negative change. And here's the key one, to get a certain level of comfort with change where we don't know if it's positive or negative yet, and be able to see it so that we can begin to evaluate it. Because that's one of the, like, again, not speaking for you, but for me, one of the biggest barriers to change is the fear that I'll take on a change, it will turn out to be negative and I won't be able to undo it, which is not very sensible when I say it out loud, but I can tell that that's happening in the back of my head a lot. Oh, if I do this thing, then I'm going to die sad with dirt on my face and holes in my shoes. These kind of the narrative, right? Okay. And it's like, well, no, if I make a mistake, it's a mistake and I'll figure it out. But like some part of my brain hasn't gotten that memo yet. And
no, I love it. I love it. I love this stuff. I just feel like I talk too much, Wes. I apologize. I just think, I think
that's why we have editors, baby.
I'm gonna, yeah, exactly. I think I'm gonna like find my like happy medium, but it pulled it out. And there's something that's kind of like PTSD about it, there's something about learning and about like how important it was for me to learn about what was wrong with me to get out of the hellhole that I was in.
Yeah.
And now, like, I feel like I kind of get traumatized and re-traumatized when I'm around people who aren't learning, but so that's why it's so fun to talk to you, Wes, because it's just like, so I'm like, it's like the salve to the thing that literally kept me being sick for so long, which is my parents weren't paying enough attention, or they didn't have no right framework to figure out what was wrong. This because this started when I was a kid. And then like I'm thinking whatever in my conscious framework and just like pushing those buttons that were not the right buttons to push. And so I think like imagine tutoring or talking to and this is the toughest one for me, talking to a parent. I gotta hop off. It's just, like when a parent's struggling to learn, there's something about it that just triggers me because it's like I see myself in the kid. Because I'm like, you're you might be holding the keys to this kid feeling a lot better or, whatever. And you're just focused on what's on your conscious framework. Same thing, doing that more, I need to speed up on the test, And so, God, that just having that like feedback loop with you, I think as a nice foil to a lot of people really struggling to learn, it's nice reprieve, honestly, because and I'm different, I will throw myself in new situations. Like I don't give a shit about myself. So I think that like, I could learn a lot from you, Wes, on that front. So I appreciate it.
I'm really glad to hear it. Ian, I've found this to be just fascinating. I'm looking forward to the next piece of the journey, wherever it goes.